On this Monday night, wildfire smoke clouds the big smoke and beyond. The air quality concerns in parts of Canada.
I try to stay indoors as much as possible.
Plus, the Manitoba city on high alert, flash flooding in the Montreal area, and the vicious storm that hammered Calgary.
Oh my gosh, it was crazy.
Ultimatum, what the U.S. president is threatening if Russia doesn't end its war on Ukraine. Barred from crossing the U.S. border.
I was basically told to turn around.
Why this New Hampshire man is stuck in New Brunswick. Plus, NASA cameras boldly go where they've never gone before.
I was like, yes.
What new close-up shots of the sun could teach us Earthlings.
Global National with Donna Friesen.
Good evening and thanks for joining us. A sweltering heat wave in Ontario combined with terrible air quality is causing misery for millions of Canadians, including in the country's largest city. Toronto's skyline is shrouded in wildfire smoke, and alerts have been issued warning people to avoid vigorous outdoor activities. Today, Toronto's air quality ranks among the worst in the world. At one point, it peaked at the second worst overall, just ahead of Kinshasa in the Democratic Republic of Congo and just behind Baghdad in Iraq. Here's what's causing it: the smoke drifting from wildfires across the prairies in northwestern Ontario, smothering not only parts of Saskatchewan and Manitoba, but further east and into parts of the United States as well. We have complete coverage of the extreme weather from Calgary and from Toronto. Jeff Semple begins our reporting tonight.
This summer day in Canada's largest city brought a double-edged sword. Those looking to escape the extreme heat wave by hitting the pool found themselves breathing in some of the most dangerous air in the world.
It was bad this morning, I know, because these guys were at the park, and it was brutal.
I woke up thinking, oh, the wildfires are back.
Smoke from wildfires burning thousands of kilometers away has settled over Toronto, sparking air quality warnings across the region.
We'll take a look at the Toronto skyline. You would normally have a clear view of the CN Tower from here, but not today. You can see the pollution, you can feel it in your lungs.
Wildfire smoke carries poisonous particulate matter, PM 2.5, that can penetrate deep into our lungs, causing inflammation. The World Health Organization recommends keeping levels below 15. Today's levels in some Toronto neighborhoods reached 132.
This was actually one of the more concentrated hits we've seen with tiny particulate levels over 100 in downtown Toronto. And I think we barely hit that in 2023.
Indeed, 2023 was Canada's worst ever wildfire season, with 11 times as many poor air quality days compared with 2020. The area burned by wildfires so far this season is the second largest on record.
This is not just a one-off event. The climate has warmed 1.2 degrees or so, and there's more warming in the pipe.
For people with respiratory issues like asthmatic Christine Moffat, that's an anxious new normal.
I try to stay indoors as much as possible.
She suffered an asthma attack due to the wildfire smoke last month.
We ended up having to go to the hospital for it. For me, that pretty much lowered my baseline in terms of my asthma control.
So it's not just those who have chronic disease who are susceptible. We can all be susceptible. We could be battling a cold or some other infection. And the smoke could be the straw that breaks the camel's back and makes this infection much worse.
Fortunately, these smoky skies should be short-lived, with air quality improving this evening. But Canada's wildfire season is just warming up. Jeff Semple, Global News, Toronto.
This is Saskatoon, Saskatchewan, as the sun rose this morning. Within an hour, thick wildfire smoke blew in and the city was completely blanketed. According to Environment Canada's air quality reading, Saskatoon was ranked at 10 plus today, representing a very high risk. And in other parts of the country, people are dealing with more than just fire and smoke. Powerful summer storms are also packing a punch. Heather Yourex-West reports on the extreme weather and the outlook for the season ahead. And in other parts of the country, people are dealing with more than just fire and smoke. Powerful summer storms are also packing a punch. Heather Yourex-West reports on the extreme weather and the outlook for the season ahead.
There's more help heading to Manitoba as a crew from New Zealand makes its way to that province's firefight. Cooler temperatures and rain have helped the situation in recent days in places like Thompson, where the city of 13,000 remains on evacuation alert.
So there is a reduced fire risk for the next couple of days. Unfortunately, the entire week is dry, and it is going to start heating up again towards next weekend.
But while the rain has been welcome in some parts of the country, elsewhere it's been destructive. In Quebec Sunday, nearly 100 millimeters fell in and around Montreal, causing flash flooding and leaving residents of this West Island neighborhood cleaning up soggy basements for the second year in a row.
The downstairs is our family space, and it's my daughter's bedroom, and so it took us until just a few months ago to really get everything finished. Yeah. But it is what it is. We'll get through it.
Calgary saw a damaging summer storm Sunday as well. The supercell delivering hail and strong winds that snapped trees, flooded streets, and damaged siding, knocking out power to more than 100 homes.
Oh my gosh, it was crazy. We were out on our balcony and we could see the trees just swaying back and forth. It started off just little pellets and then it turned into toonie-sized hail.
In southern Alberta, the rain will end by Tuesday morning with as much as 80 millimeters expected to fall before the storm ends. Donna?
All right, Heather Yourex-West in Calgary. Thank you. There are dangerous wildfires burning in the U.S., too. This is the moment a towering blaze in Utah became a fire vortex, flames and smoke swirling like a large tornado. And in northern Arizona, wildfires have led to evacuations and destroyed dozens of buildings, including an historic lodge in Grand Canyon National Park. It was the only lodge inside the park at the North Rim, a region that has now been closed for the remainder of the tourist season. With more rain in the forecast, authorities in Texas are keeping an eye on river levels as they keep searching for flood victims. Heavy rain over the weekend temporarily paused recovery efforts. Authorities believe there are more than 170 people still missing after the catastrophic flash flooding on July 4th weekend. At least 132 people are known to have died. One of the 4 men arrested last week in that alleged anti-government plot to seize land near Quebec City was granted bail today. 33-year-old Matthew Forbes, who was charged with a series of weapons offenses, must comply with a lengthy list of conditions, including wearing a GPS tracking bracelet. The 3 others charged with terrorism-related offenses will have a bail hearing later this month. And more information is emerging about the military-grade weapons and equipment the group is accused of stockpiling. David Aiken is following this for us. David.
Well, Donna, 2 of the 4 men arrested last week are in the Army. 1 used to be in the Army, and the 4th was once a civilian instructor to Air Force cadets. So, given those connections to the military, the Canadian Armed Forces issued a statement just hours before today's court hearing began, saying, "The weapons, ammunition, and explosives that were seized as part of the RCMP-led investigation did not originate from the Canadian Armed Forces." The statement did not say where the men obtained many of the restricted weapons and systems they are alleged to have possessed, and no evidence has yet been tabled in court on that issue. The men are accused of possessing, for example, military rifles, smoke grenades, and the latest generation of sophisticated night vision goggles, a model made by L3 Harris known as BNVD Fused. Night vision equipment is legal in Canada, but that particular model is heavily restricted and is only sold to military buyers.
I think what really tipped off the government response to this was the BNVD Fused. Because that is a relatively new device coming from the U.S.
L3 Harris advertises its product as having the latest technology to, quote, give warfighters abilities to more quickly neutralize threats, end quote.
So the reason this stuff is restricted is because it is the latest technology and it's U.S. origin, and the U.S. has quite tight export restrictions on these devices.
Now, there's no sense yet when any trials will begin, but the 3 men still seeking bail will be back in court July 24th. Donna.
Okay, David Aiken in Ottawa, thanks. The American president is promising to send sophisticated defensive weapons to Ukraine. Donald Trump met NATO's Secretary General at the White House today, and Trump is now talking tough about Russia, threatening to impose another round of punishing sanctions unless the Kremlin agrees to a peace deal within 50 days. Jackson Prosco reports on the shift in tone from the White House.
There is no sign of Russia relenting. Overnight, another wave of drones struck sites across Ukraine, just as the U.S. envoy to the region arrived for talks.
I'm disappointed in President Putin because I thought we would have had a deal 2 months ago, but it doesn't seem to get there.
In Washington, patience is wearing thin. U.S. President Donald Trump once promised he'd end the war within 24 hours and wavered on further support for Ukraine. Now he seems to realize Russian President Vladimir Putin has no interest in stopping the fight.
I've been hearing so much talk. It's all talk. It's all talk, and then missiles go into Kiev.
Sitting with NATO's Secretary General, Trump announced an abrupt about-face. The U.S. will now sell weapons to NATO members directly, so they, in turn, can ship their existing stockpiles to the front lines in Ukraine. That includes Patriot missile defense systems and badly needed artillery shells.
It will mean that Ukraine can get its hands on really massive numbers of military equipment.
Trump also demanded Russia reach a peace deal within 50 days or face severe new tariffs, including the possibility of secondary sanctions on countries who still trade with Russia.
On the sanctions front, especially around oil, the United States could impose very meaningful costs on the Russians if this 50-day deadline isn't met.
While 50 days is a generous grace period for Russia, the U.S. believes NATO allies can get new weapons to Ukraine almost immediately. That may increase pressure on Moscow to finally sit down and talk, now that it's clear the West is not giving up the fight. Jackson Prosco, Global News, Washington.
Israeli strikes killed more than 30 people in Gaza overnight. According to local hospitals, at least 12 people were killed in southern Gaza, including 3 who were waiting at an aid distribution point. More than 20 people, including 3 children and 2 women, died in other Israeli strikes. Israel's military maintains that it only targets militants and blames civilian deaths by claiming Hamas is operating in densely populated areas. Questions about the Prime Minister's financial assets coming up, why the Conservatives say Mark Carney needs to sell all his investments. There are renewed accusations by the federal Conservatives that Prime Minister Mark Carney isn't doing enough to ensure he doesn't improperly benefit from assets he acquired after his extensive career in the private sector. Carney has put all his investments into a blind trust, as required by law. Now the Conservative leader says Carney should sell those assets. The Ethics Commissioner publicly disclosed Carney's assets last week, and the rules are designed to prevent office holders from making decisions that might benefit themselves. But as Mackenzie Gray reports, Pierre Poilievre believes what Carney has done is not good enough.
Reference one of the big strategic initiatives that Brookfield has taken in the last few years.
For years, those were the key decisions Mark Carney made at one of Canada's biggest companies.
To support workers.
But once Carney entered politics, he faced scrutiny over his personal financial interest in Brookfield.
I own nothing but cash and personal real estate. So, that's not going to change.
But he does have investments declared to the Ethics Commissioner, including a long-term incentive plan based on how well a Brookfield Clean Energy Fund he founded performs, and stock options in Brookfield Asset Management, which company filings show is worth 9.3 million Canadian. They're now placed in a blind trust, which Carney can't access until he leaves office. But this expert believes the executor of Carney's trust is unlikely to make major changes.
An asset that's like a stock option that you wouldn't sell because it wouldn't have value until it vests. So there are some blind trusts for which you'd have a pretty good sense of what remains in it.
The Conservatives want Carney to liquidate all his assets, including the over 500 stocks the disclosure says are held in a third-party investment account.
Mr. Carney is clearly not blind of what he holds because even we know what he holds due to this disclosure. And this will put him in an impossible position where he will be conflicted at every turn.
To avoid conflicts, Carney and the Ethics Commissioner have agreed to not allow the Prime Minister to make decisions in over 100 companies he has ties to, including multiple Brookfield properties and payment processing giant Stripe. If one of those companies do come up, Carney's supposed to leave the room and make a public disclosure.
What we really rely upon is that public office holders have an obligation not to place themselves in a conflict of interest, to not put their private interests ahead of their public duties.
Carney is allowed to own specific assets if they're put into a blind trust, Donna, something the Prime Minister's office pointed to in a statement, saying Carney worked with the commissioner before he was required to expedite the disclosure.
Mackenzie Gray in Ottawa, thanks. Operations are expected to return to normal at Toronto's CN Tower tomorrow. Food and beverage workers have ratified a new agreement with the Canada Lands Company, ending a 2-week labor dispute and lockout. Unifor says the new 3-year deal will include an annual 4.25% wage increase for non-gratuity earners. Workers who earn tips will receive a 4% raise in the first year, followed by 2.5% in the following 2 years. Certain cooks and attendants will also get immediate wage increases. Ahead, the precarious problem of a Canadian turned away at the U.S. border. France is celebrating Bastille Day, the country's biggest national holiday. In Paris, the annual parade featured fighter jets, combat vehicles, and a record 7,000 military personnel marching down the Champs-Élysées. The day marks the storming of the Bastille prison in 1789 that sparked the French Revolution. A Canadian citizen who has lived in the United States nearly his entire life and has a U.S. green card is considering his future after he was denied re-entry to the U.S. He's stuck in New Brunswick after 2 old cannabis possession charges came back to haunt him. If he does get back to the U.S., he will almost certainly be detained, a frightening scenario in the current political climate. Heidi Petracek spoke to him about his options.
Christopher Landry is in limbo, a Canadian citizen who's lived in New Hampshire since he was a child. He's married with 5 kids and has permanent U.S. residency. But after visiting family in New Brunswick, he encountered trouble at the border crossing in Houlton, Maine, trouble he's never had before.
Long story short, after 3 hours of interrogation and things like that, I was basically told to turn around.
Landry has 2 prior convictions in the U.S. for cannabis possession more than 15 years ago, enough to bar entry under long-standing American law. While he can't vote in the U.S., Landry once considered himself a Trump supporter. Not anymore.
He's hurting a lot of people, and a lot of people that haven't done anything, wrong. All I wanted was a better economy and a better future for my kids.
Now they're trying to catch everyone they can.
Immigration lawyer Blair Hodgman isn't involved in this case, but says Landry needs an American lawyer and will have to return stateside.
He'll be detained until his issues resolved. And hopefully they would just detain him locally instead of shipping him off to Louisiana.
Louisiana, home to multiple ICE detention centers as President Trump increases detentions at sites throughout the United States. As of last month, Global Affairs was aware of 55 Canadians in ICE detention. 1 Canadian died in custody in Florida.
The quickest pathway right now is through detainment, and that's a scary thought in itself.
So if you're going from Canada, if you have any kind of criminality, and even a pardon or suspended, you need to talk to a lawyer.
Landry is now separated from his family and his job, unsure how long it will take to return to what he thought was his home. Heidi Petracek, Global News, Halifax.
The U.S. Federal Aviation Administration and Boeing say fuel switch locks on Boeing-made aircraft are safe, following intense scrutiny after last month's deadly Air India crash. It is the latest development in the probe to determine whether the tragedy in early June was caused by pilot error or a mechanical failure. Preliminary findings reveal both engine fuel switches were flipped from run to cutoff. Cockpit recordings also captured the confusion between the pilots about how and why they were turned off. All but one of the 260 people on board were killed when the plane crashed just seconds after takeoff. Sunseeker next, how NASA captured the closest ever images of the sun and what we could learn from it. You could own a piece of another planet if you've got a few $1 million to spare. Sotheby's is putting the largest piece of Mars ever found on Earth up for auction. It weighs about 25 kilograms and was discovered in the Sahara Desert in 2023. The meteorite is expected to sell for between $2 and $4 million. NASA has revealed the closest images ever taken of the sun's atmosphere. The Parker Solar Probe made the flyby last December. It has taken months for the footage to get back to Earth and be verified. Redmond Shannon explains what it reveals and what the groundbreaking research could lead to.
Liftoff of the mighty Delta IV Heavy rocket with NASA's Parker Solar Probe.
The Parker Solar Probe left Earth to get closer to the sun than any human-made object ever has, traveling at a record 192 kilometers a second.
The mission uses Venus in order to actually change its angular momentum and slow down to actually go closer and closer to the sun.
It has repeatedly zoomed through the sun's magnetically charged atmosphere, or corona, making its closest run last December.
If this pale blue dot were Earth, then the sun would be about this big, and it would be about 23 meters away. The Parker probe got about as close as I am.
The close-up images captured are remarkable, showing the interaction between coronal mass ejections, or CMEs, swirling from its surface.
I was like, yes.
Angelos Vorlidas is the project scientist for the telescopes on board.
This information, which is captured from so close by, will allow us to understand how strong is the magnetic field in them and what really happens in these magnetized clouds.
Magnetic storms can make their way to Earth as solar winds, sometimes damaging power grids, threatening astronauts and lighting up the skies as aurora.
Our holy grail is to provide enough specificity on how strong the magnetic field will be in that CME and how fast it will be hitting Earth so that they can take action.
Perhaps eventually giving those chasing the northern lights a 3-day heads up for where and when to look to the skies. Redmond Shannon, Global News, London.
And that is Global National for this Monday. I'm Donna Friesen. Tonight's Your Canada showcases Grand Beach in Grand Marais, Manitoba, Calgary, Alberta, and Bellevaux Cove Lighthouse in Bellevaux Cove, Nova Scotia. Please keep them coming. Send your pictures of Canadian pride to globalnational@globalnews.ca. And thanks for watching. Hope to see you here again tomorrow. Bye-bye.